We have lots of useful information on here. So what I wanted to show you all though is under account management, we have a link here. It says online LPC supervision management guide. This can be really helpful for you all that are supervisors on how to, sorry, sorry about that, guys. Where'd it go? Here it is. So this here will show you all the steps on setting up your account if you don't already have one, and how to add and delete supervisors and to add hours. So this is a really helpful guide. Tim Spear, who is also on this call, he's our operations manager, has really worked hard on trying to make the website a little more friendlier. And so lots of screenshots, which it really helps. I mean, even for me to understand the processes that you guys and the steps that you guys are having to see. So I just wanted to for sure throw that out there. While I'm on the website real quick, I wanted to also show you all, which
Christina,
hopefully you already know.
can you
I'm
show
sorry?
us one more time how to get to that?
Oh,
I'm sure
sure.
people just came on. And Tim, thank you for being here too.
Oh, not a problem. I just wanted to let everybody know that this particular supervision module is not totally completed yet. It's available and it can do some of our functions, but it's not yet where we want it. We want to get it to the point where you can use it to finalize supervision when somebody's done. It was initially created to try and take care of the changing of supervisors, in midstream, because we were encountering a lot of paperwork where that was concerned, and we were wanting to eliminate as much of that paperwork as we could. Later on, as changes happened and we moved to BHEC, et cetera, we realized that we weren't ambitious enough in the creation of this module. And so we're going to be looking in the future at improving this particular module, because right now all it's really good for is management of your supervisees. So adding and dropping and putting in hours and stuff. It doesn't eliminate the requirement of sending in the supervised experience verification form and signing it and putting in all that stuff. So it doesn't work for that yet. I don't have an ETA on when it will be, but that's our goal, is to move to an online supervision registration, supervision completion, submission of hours, all of that kind of stuff, so we can get paper out of the equation and speed up licensing, make it easier for you guys. You don't have to deal with mailing and is the form the up-to-date form and all that kind of bureaucrat nonsense that everybody loves. That's it.
That's awesome though, Tim. Thank you so much. I mean,
Yeah.
it just keeps getting better and better.
Yes, it really is very useful though. Like it's instead of having to email in the supervisor change form, it still has the ability where you can add your new supervisee. So it's pretty quick with that. So just look at it and play around with it in your online licensing portal. Again, there's lots of really helpful information in here for new LPCs, or just to, if you have something happen to your license and you need to reinstate it. We just have a lot of information on here. So just make sure and go and play around on our website and really get familiar with it. So there were two questions that you had sent over to me, Kate. And so I just wanted to hit those real quick. And then after that, we can kind of whatever, you guys want to discuss, if that's okay.
No, that's perfect. And this is a good time to kind of do our housekeeping. If everyone would just click on the chat and pull it out so it's actually so that you can see it all the time. If you have two monitors, maybe throw it over there. My assistant Jennifer is going to put the link in the chat so you can put your information in and we can get you the CE certificate for today. As you know, we take attendance two ways. We compare what we see with what Zoom tells us is here, and then we will verify you and get you that certificate. So yeah, put those questions into the chat and we will monitor that. So yeah, because I only had a few questions for you, Christina, but I know there are more than that.
Tim also said he could answer questions in the chat as well.
Awesome. All right, cool. So yeah, go ahead, Christina.
So one of the two questions that we had was related to someone who was applying for supervisor designation, and they stated that they were asked to submit a new NPDB. I did get with our CEO yesterday, and she ran it and checked the online and all that fun process. And we are not requiring it. So I'm not sure if there was some miscommunication or what was going on with that. But at this time again, and she even looked for a year ago, and it has not been requiring it. So I'm not sure what was going on with that there. And then I know the other big thing was related to the
Can
50%.
you explain a little bit about the NPD?
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you first apply, and then Tim, I think it's when you do your upgrade, right? Not renewals. You have to go in and do your fingerprints with NPDB. It's another site that you have to go to that's also found on our website. Most of you should have, well, probably all of you should have already have done it. If not, it will happen at your next renewal period. Okay. Okay, so back on the 50% rule for the CEs. So it sounds like a lot of people are a little nervous about this. So the rule, it is effective January 1, 2024. So if you have to renew, in January or after, you are required to have completed your continuing education in the areas of under that 50%, which I wanted to pull that rule up. So let me share screen on that one real quick too. Let's see, where is it? I had it all prepared beforehand, but don't know where it went.
You're fine.
Here it is. Okay. And if someone didn't do it, go ahead and make sure you're doing it now. You will need to, if for some reason you were audited and you needed to show those continuing education certificates for that 50%, which you probably did do one that falls under this and just don't know it. So more than likely you do comply with it. But if you didn't do it and your license has expired and you're having to go back and complete those, you may have to pay a late fee. So depending on where that lands. So in Rule 681.140, which is the requirements for continuing education, we all should know now that it's 24 hours of continuing education, 3 in cultural diversity, and then 6 in the ethics. And if you're a supervisor, 6 of the 24, so no longer additional 6 of the 24 must be in supervision specifically. So when you go down to Rule F as in Frank, so the licensees must obtain at least 50% of the CE hours from one of the following, or for one or more of the following. So these that are listed here, again, you guys are probably already completing your CEs from something that's listed here. So an international, national, regional, state, or local association of medical, mental, or behavioral health professionals, the school districts, education services, city, county, state, federal government entities, the education system, religious or charitable organizations, supervisors, hospitals, hospital system. So more than likely you're already doing this, but if not, it is your responsibility as the licensee to make sure that you are getting at least 50% of your CEs from here, and the other 50% can be from anywhere else. Again, has to be in counseling though. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. It either has to come from these organizations, or these organizations can approve or sponsor that education. So if you're using a different provider, but on the certificate it says endorsed by or approved by the American Counseling Association or TCA or whatever, that makes those also fall under this 50%. So that's one of the big areas where people can find out that they actually met the requirement unknowingly. So also keep that in mind.
Yeah. Are there any questions? This is one that we seem to get. I know at TCA we had a lot of questions on it. So from this group here, are there any questions on it? Again, like Tim said, you're probably already doing something that falls under here. So, you know, that's good to know, but are there any specific questions? Because that was the second question that you had sent me.
Yes, and I think, and if you look in the chat, you know, someone's asking if I'm a 50% or if Pessy is a 50%. It's, and what Tim's saying, it should say so on the certificate, and we updated that last year, so you can see on your certificate that yes, I'm a 50% person, but if you're taking a course from Pessy and the person who's giving the presentation is an LPC supervisor, let's say, then they would fall under that. Now, I mean, I know we're going to have like all kinds of different examples, you know, of what could fall under that 50% rule. So I don't want to act like I know all this, because I just keep saying it. I mean, this is a new rule. Like you won't know until you see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, the majority of the CEs that you all are going to complete will comply with the requirement. So, you know, I don't want anyone to stress out over it. And again, you know, if it's a counseling, continuing education, more than likely you guys are taking what will qualify under the 50%.
Great, awesome, thank you.
So what I'm referring to for it being on the certificate is it would say something like, oh, you know, this course is endorsed by the by TCA, or this course is approved for units by so and so. The blurb that's on there about meeting Texas requirements, that means that it meets the requirements for general education, not the 50%. So it's, you know, you'll be able to use it one way or the other. You just may not be able to use it for the 50% requirement, but it isn't going to be
True.
late.
Yeah.
Okay. I see attending a graduate level course, maximum claim for this activity is 5 hours. Is that per class or total for this category, even if you took multiple classes?
Total.
So going back to this idea, let me ask you, Cristina, it's always interesting when you tell us, how do we know we're getting audited? And then we can look at Dr. Rob's comment too, but how would one know they were getting audited for their CEs?
Sure. I'm going to share my screen again with you all just so you can see exactly what it will look like. Let me go into it real quick. So under our FAQs on the LPC webpage, this is one of the FAQs that we have on there. So it's towards the bottom, and it's how do I know if I'm under CE audit? And so what you'll see here is this blue courtesy renewal card that we will send you in the mail, which means you are not under audit. If you get an actual letter in the mail from us, then you are selected for audit, and you would need to upload your CEs at that renewal time.
If you're not under audit, do not upload your CEs. We do not need them unless you're under audit.
Correct.
So that will save us a lot of storage space. Also, she had mentioned the NPDB searches. We have been required by the legislature to do request an NPDB search on individuals who are under audit. So that will be another thing that will have to happen. The National Practitioner Data Bank stuff is a snapshot in time. So even though you may have done one when you got your license issued, that information can change. And unlike the DPS fingerprint records where we have real-time access to the data, with the NPDB, we only get a snapshot for that particular date and time. And so that's why the NPDB is being required on audit.
And Tim, that's different than the self-query, correct?
No, that is the self-query.
Okay, so the fingerprinting, I know you go someplace and get it done. The self-query, they send you
Yes.
sealed envelope. So it would be both of those things.
Well, no, you don't have to do the fingerprinting. The fingerprinting is just for the first time you get the license, because the way the fingerprinting works is that puts us on like a listserv. And so anytime there's a change in your record, we get notified of that. And sometimes it's just a change of address or something. It doesn't mean that something bad happened. But with NPDB, we don't get any type of back and forth notification. So we're required to report to them. They're not required to report back to us.
Gotcha.
So the self-query also, now they have what's called a digitally certified copy, which is a PDF that's got a special security on it. And so you don't have to do it paper mail. You can do an email version of it and then send us the email PDF, send us the PDF and upload that. So that's made things a lot easier where the NPDB is concerned.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Aaron, you said the activities are acceptable, but that doesn't mean it will count on a strict audit. Do you mean things like the self-study or? Go ahead and unmute. Oh.
No, he just means that it may or may not count for the 50%, which is, echoing what we had mentioned earlier.
Gotcha. All right. So Carrie's asking, is there a preferred statement that TCA, for example, should put on the certificate that indicates being approved 50% provider under the rule?
There's nothing specific that we would suggest, but you can certainly put it on there because it meets it.
There's no board rule that requires you to do it, though.
Right.
Okay, I want to make sure I don't skip any of these, but I do want to go back up about the rules about how to become a CEU provider. And what's the rule about becoming a CE provider?
We do not approve CE providers. So that was something that was a couple sessions ago that they had us get out of the business of approving CE providers. So unfortunately, you wouldn't get it through us.
So what that does is it means that you don't need our approval to be a CE provider, which is kind of a good thing because people were paying $50 for basically a rubber stamp. Because there wasn't any real rigor or any of that type of stuff in the analysis of the application. It was just information, $50, and then we sent them back a number. It was, it didn't have any real regulatory benefit.
So one of the other questions that I've seen is, okay, so I'm a CE provider. What do I do now? Like, what does a CE provider need to do? I mean, beyond give a certificate. I mean, after they've presented the material.
Well, that stuff's listed in the rule as to what they're supposed to do. So they just, keep the records, for a certain amount of time, make sure that the certificates are provided, that the presenters are knowledgeable in the field, that kind of thing. And that it's somehow related to counseling.
Awesome. Thank you. Is social media addressed specifically in the rules?
No,
I don't think so.
not for LPC. No, I don't know if any of the other boards do, but I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, we got rid of a lot of the we've made it a lot less strict, so you don't have to go to in-person CE. It doesn't have to be real-time CE. So I mean, if you're watching continuing education that's a recorded video, that's also acceptable. Self-study, a lot of people have questions about self-study. What does that mean? Self-study is things that you're doing on your own. So let's say you're reading some journals on your own, then that would be considered self-study. Anything that doesn't result in getting a certificate is going to be self-study. So if you do something, it might be self-paced, but you get a certificate at the end of it, That's not self-study, that's just self-paced. So you're getting a certificate, then that means it's formal. If you're not getting a certificate and you're doing it on your own, then that's going to be self-study, and you get you get to use that to factor in for 1 hour.
So what else is on the horizon, Christina? Anything coming up that we need to know about?
Not too much coming up. The 4-year rule review is coming up at the end of the year, so that's something to definitely kind of be on the lookout for, because your feedback is really important on that process. Do we have a lot of supervisors on here on this call?
Looks to me like there are, but
A lot. Okay. Yeah, so the biggest thing I just want to push to you all is, and I'm sure you guys are all the best supervisors, because again, you're working with Dr. Walker. But just remind your supervisees of what the rules do say about supervision too. Usually they might not look at what the rules explain under supervision, so they may not know what is expected from their supervisor. So they're probably doing great with you, but they move or whatever the case is, and they need to find a second supervisor or a new supervisor. That way they know what to expect. So that's one big thing. And as you all probably know, and I say in the presentations with the board members, is get everything in writing. It's so important in case of any documents that the board's requesting. It's really important to get that information in writing. So if we ask for it, you would be able to present it to us. And that goes back to the LPC associate as well. And let me see real quick. I think we have one rule that should be adopted. Our next board meeting is next Friday, February 2nd. Hopefully you all will be there. We will be looking at, oh yeah, so the NCE, we only had, I think it was 2 comments on it that supported it for removing the NCE expiration. So if anyone, needed to apply with us and if they took the NCE longer than 5 years ago, we would go ahead and still take it if they passed the NCE or the NCMHCE. So we're just taking off that expiration of the national exam date. So other than that, there's not too much. I think, with that 4-year rule review, I do expect there to be some changes. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on, and, stay informed, sign up for email updates and spread the word on it. But not too much else going on.
so talk a little bit about the 4-year rules review. I mean, you were here for the last one, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a long day. We tried to get it all done in one day. Well, we did get it all in one day. We were there, I think, till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. But so right now, so what they have to do, board members have to look at every single rule. And it's very time consuming, but at the same time, it's important that they need to do it, because we all know the world changes, and especially right now, with technology and all of that. So it's important that they look at everything, and it's important to hear from you all, because they're so zoned in at each and every one of all these rules, they may miss something or not think of something. And so that's why you guys are so important on providing that public comment related to any of the rules that they're talking about or might not be talking about, but that process will start towards the end of this year. And it could take another year or so for that whole process to go through. There's going to be quite a bit of board meetings. And as y'all know, it starts with the board, has to go to the council, and then, out for public comment. And there's a couple more steps in between there, and then back to the board to review all the public comment, and then back to the council. So it is a very, lengthy process, but it's important because we need as many eyes on it, to move forward on rule changes and make sure they're actually ones that are needed.
One of the things that we're going to try and focus on is to make these rules easier to read. Because right now they're kind of like a city that grows over time and has all those windy streets and stuff. It's not like something that's a planned community. So it's been kind of an organic document for decades, and it's turned into a bunch of word problems. And so what we're hoping to do is to be able to parse it down into outline form and make it a lot less dense. I think that if we apply ourselves, we can probably cut about 30% of the words out of it.
And
That would
there's
be-
a lot of things that we want to do in rules, but we might not be able to because we have the statute that we can't, change. That requires a legislative, change. And so some of you may know of some things in there, but we wish maybe there were, some bigger ones that cause problems for people, especially coming from out of state. If that person was licensed 10 years ago out of state and have been practicing for these past 10 years and have their own private practice and everything, but they only completed 2,000 hours, our statute requires 3,000. They'd have to come into Texas as an LPC associate, go under supervision, and get the remaining hours. And it's a tough rule that we don't like and the board doesn't like, but our hands are tied on it. So we're, with this rule change, we definitely are going to do as much as we can. But there are some things that just our hands are tied on.
Can you talk just a minute about the difference between statute and rule? Because I know we've got a lot of people on the call who, they are new to supervision, or they're new to counseling. I mean, we've got associates on the call, we've got fully licensed folks on the call. What's the difference between statute and rule, and why is it hard to change a rule if there's a statute in place?
Yeah. So the board rules are essentially the rules that are outlined by the board members, and in this case, now that we're under the council. So, it's something that is more manageable that the board can do, but the statute is something that is legislatively mandated rules. And so if there's something there that conflicts with a board rule, or maybe a board rule conflicts with, statute, that's where we'd be required to make that change in our rule to comply with statute. Statute trumps the board rules.
Statute can be looked at as the bones of the regulation. So you have to have statutory authority to make a rule. So the legislature, basically the way those statutes work, or the way those laws work, is the legislature will make what the basic requirements are, and then they will add in language for the board to write rules to get that done. And then they will also include in their language, like the board can request documentation necessary to achieve this end result, etc. So the statutes are laws. Rules are built upon the authority of those laws, and so they have the effect of law, but they are not laws because you don't have a legislative body enacting them. But since they're promulgated through a legal system, they have the effect of law. So that's the way regulation works in Texas. If you're a doctor, the medical board writes the rules based upon the statute that's provided by the legislature. So the kernel is in the statute. The best statutes are the ones that are the most broad, because then it gives, you have the flexibility necessary. Some of you I saw in your credentials here are also licensed chemical dependency counselors. Their statute is very, very narrow. It is not broad at all. Almost all of the requirements that are listed in rule are also in statute. And so what happens is that rules can be changed in 6 to 8 months. Statutes have to get approved by the legislature, and that's every 2 years if it passes. And if you look at recently, you had the compact, the counseling compact legislation. It died. It did not pass. So if you had, changes that you wanted in the LCDC statute, it has to pass. for that to happen. And even bills that everybody likes sometimes fail.
Okay, I'm checking for questions again in the chat. It's a good question. I see this one a lot too. You know, exactly what is required. Is it mandatory for LPC associates to use the BHEC hour tracking form? Are there other methods?
Now that tracking form is there as a convenience. So you can
You
use
guys
it
do that a lot. You have a lot of stuff in there that's just very, you know, it is for our convenience,
Yeah.
but you give us a lot of liberty to kind of do what we need to do to get the job done.
So it's what's called a safe harbor form. It means that if you use this, you'll probably stay out of trouble.
Okay, Lisa wants to know if audits are ever done retrospectively.
That's not the way it works. We only do the audits on current licensing or current renewals.
I want to go back to one thing. Cristina, tell us why staff can't answer legal questions when people call them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't even think any of the LPC staff are actual LPCs to begin with there. And we're not, we're not attorneys. We can't interpret the rule for you. So unfortunately, we'll have to guide you to seek your own legal counsel and in relation to that. And definitely we'll hear you out and help as we can guide you, but we cannot legally tell you what you should and shouldn't do in situations.
It's kind of similar if you look at it to the police department. I don't know of anybody who calls the police department and asks, is this legal or illegal? We don't do that. We're kind of the police department for the industry.
Yeah, regulating the license.
Yeah, so we, and also to provide legal advice, you have to have a client relationship and have a law license. So we would be doing something that we're not legally allowed to do. It would be like practicing LPC without a license. Don't do it.
I see a comment that came in. Do we ever audit LPC associate hour logs when turned in for upgrade? We don't want your logs. The only time we will ask for your logs is if there are some issues with supervision when you submit your supervised experience documentation form. Otherwise, we don't want your form. You and so the supervisor and the associate should be maintaining all your records and logs, and we do not need them unless they are specifically requested for a reason.
So tell us how staff counts supervision hours. How do they count the 4 hours a month?
Okay, so you're talking about, so
I'm smiling because this is a huge question. And
yeah, I mean,
little
again, so let's say that the supervisor and supervisee start in the middle of the month. That's two weeks per that month, and we're pretty flexible. The board removed a lot of the rules back in, I think it was 2016. Previously, it was you needed an hour of supervision every week. The board went back and changed that, modified that to 4 hours per month. So the responsibility is on the supervisor and supervisee. If let's just say that Dr. Walker is going to be out the first week of February, and you all already know that. So you're either going to set up 2 hours of supervision that second week, and then do an hour the third week, and do an hour the fourth week. If there's a 2-week vacation, as long as you all communicate, the supervisor and supervisee, 4 hours per month, that's what we're looking for. And again, this is something that the supervisor and supervisee will be tracking. This isn't something that the board is tracking. Now, there is a rule that if there's going to be someone out for, I think it's for more than 30 days, then the supervisor needs to document that in the associate record in their file. We don't need to know about it. That is between the supervisor and the supervisee.
There's no specific form for that either. You just
Yes,
put it
no
in
form.
the supervision logs. That's fine.
Correct.
One of the difficulties that we've had with this is that we've got what's called a standardization committee. And one of the things that we're trying to standardize is that supervision language, because it's different for each of the boards that we deal with, but they're all trying to get the same end result. And so what we're struggling with, and that's why there isn't anything concrete on the website, what we're struggling with is a way to factor in all of the possibilities. Because if you have somebody start on the last day of the month, well, how am I supposed to get 4 hours of supervision this month? They've seen one person for 1 hour. What the heck? How do I do 4 hours of supervision on 1 hour of therapy? So those kind of questions, we understand, we get it. It isn't a one size fits all yet. And so we are going over language and trying to find, we're trying to find the language that's going to fit best.
Okay, and follow up from Crystal was what under what situation, why would logs be requested?
Sure. If a supervisor submits a supervised experience documentation form with specific hours, and the associate may come back and say, well, that's not the correct hours, we may need to go ahead and look at those logs. And it may not be the form that we have on the website, that, the guide for you all. It'll be your own, type of form, but that would be the time that we might look at those logs and look for signatures. And if that happens, we will look for the 4 hours. That's why we don't want them. So
we've got one right now where it looks like the document has been altered at some point. And so we can't tell, there isn't initials next to the altering or any of that kind of stuff that can tell us, oh, this is kosher, or it isn't. So in cases like that, we'll want to look at the logs to, instead of seeing if there's more, problems in the barrel, we want to go straight to the tree and see what's going on. So it's rare because most people are on the up and up.
yes.
But every now and again, we'll get something that will, make our antenna raise up. And we don't immediately ask for logs on that kind of stuff. I mean, we will. That's about the last thing we want to do, because those are not fun to go through. I mean, it doesn't get much more boring than that. It's if we're looking at something that might be fraudulent, we've got to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And on that note, I just want to add, I know you all know, but pass the word to others. You can only sign off on the hours for a supervisee that you completed with that supervisee. A supervisor should not be signing off on hours that a supervisee did with another supervisor.
Awesome.
Also, we don't require supervision of people not working. So if somebody is not seeing clients, for, they're just doing admin work or whatever because of whatever reason, that's fine. But the supervision is tied to the therapy. So if the person is not doing any therapy, there's nothing to supervise.
Thank you for that. I hear that sometimes too. All right, so can you speak to Dr. Rob's statement here about position statements?
Only that we're working on it, and we'd like to get something that's a little bit more one size fits all.
Okay, and then Daniela wants to know, are notarized letters appropriate as custody agreements when getting informed consent from guardians of immigrant unaccompanied minors?
We don't have anything requiring a notarization. Really, notarizations don't really do anything when you think about it. It just says that an individual has a really good fake ID.
And Jennifer, did I answer that, or did I ask that? Do you feel like that was asked and answered? The supervision month?
I think he talked about it a little bit, but it didn't sound like there was a decision, because I know it's not in the rules, but we just kind of need to know what to follow. And I've been the one, asking this question a million times. So Christina's heard it from me a couple, but It would, yeah, it's not in the rules. So people ask me to prove it. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Cristina told me. So
Yeah, that's one of the problems with that rule is that
Yeah.
it doesn't define what a month is. It doesn't talk about, how much work has been done, any of that kind of stuff. So that needs to be improved. I anticipate we'll look into that certainly during rule review, but it might come up before then as well, because the rule review is going to be a real heavy lift, because this is not going to be like the rule review we did last time, where it was it didn't deal a lot with the structure. It dealt, content was the big deal. This one's going to deal a lot with structure as well. So there's a lot of rules that are practice rules that are in the licensing section that need to be moved to the practice section. Like if you look at the supervision stuff, it doesn't just tell you how to become a supervisor. It tells you what you should do during supervision and that kind of stuff. But that's not where that should be. That should be in the supervision section in the practice rules. Just like there's a, an informed consent portion, there's this, there's that. All of these are practice rules. Those need to be in the practice section. We don't need to hide them over here in licensing where people, have to jump over to a bunch of different chapters and figure something out.
And if it helps any, because there's no like definition that the month is considered the 1st to the 31st or whatnot. If you, again, this is a relationship between the supervisor and supervisee. If you all agree that that month is the 15th to the 15th, that's your records to know that that month is the 4 weeks per month. Does that make sense? I hope that helps. Again,
I'm gonna see if we can get the board to agree to a policy on that. Maybe
we could try
do a policy and then put the policy up to say, these things would be considered a month.
And at the same time, we don't want it too strict for you all, because what if you do start with someone, on the 30th? Will that be considered for the month before or the next month? So, we want to try and keep it a little bit open, but I think definitely we can try and see if some type of policy can be put in place.
And I think a problem happens also when people take the break of 1 month or longer. Because now we have a start date, an end date, a new start date, and then, you know what I mean? So it's
good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's not a problem until you pull logs, right? And then you're pulling logs, and I know staff's trying to add it all up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that would be great if there was a policy. All right, come on. What else? We got 15 minutes, y'all.
It wasn't very clear to me the response of the notarized letters. I get clients that are immigrants, and if the person that is taking care of them, not necessarily the parents, bring a notarized letter saying, yes, we're taking care of them, here's the signature of the parent. Is that enough for me to put on the records for the informed consent to start seeing the minor? Because I don't want to prevent from seeing these people because the parents are not giving me the informed consent. Am I asking that clearly?
I understand what you're asking. This is what would be considered legal advice. And so we would not be able to give that to you. We would be able to point to the rule, what the informed consent rule is. We couldn't give you guidance as to, yes, you're doing it right. No, you're doing it wrong.
Got it.
So
thank you.
If you're a member of a professional association, check with their legal department. They may be able to do some legal research for you.
Because all you require a divorce decree indicating, I mean, in the case where there's a divorce, right? But that's really the only thing that the rules stipulate.
Yeah, and keep in mind that rules only say what's either required or what's prohibited in most cases. They don't tell you what you can do. They tell you what you must do or what you can't do. So there's a lot of gray area in there that can cause a lot of questions to arise.
Good point. Okay, so Gina is asking, how do you document hour CEs that you don't use for one renewal? Because we have the carryover hours, just like cell phone minutes. How are we documenting that?
You will keep them and submit them if you're selected for audit.
So what would happen, for example, let's say let's say we sent an audit to you, audit letter, and you sent back your CEs, and 4 hours of them are from the previous year. We would accept that. We would not from the previous renewal period. We would accept it. We wouldn't dive into it and say, hey, you got to prove this. I want to see all your certificates from the previous year because you may have used this already. We're not likely to do that unless there's some indicator that would tell us that there's malfeasance. But basically all you would do, let's say you had 30 hours of CE 1 year, and so you've got that, you did 12 hours of ethics because man, that was fun. So you've got the extra 6 hours of ethics. Well, you would just, the way I would do it personally is I would just have a folder on my computer for each renewal cycle. And then, if that certificate, I just move that one over to the next year's certificate. Next year's folder.
Yeah.
And in regard to supervision, there isn't any restriction on electronic supervision.
The rule was
it can be
removed.
all video
Yep.
supervision, or it can be all in person, or any combination of the two. That was one of the changes that the board made to try and make it easier.
Yep.
I've got a question. Any chance we'll be able to roll over grad school hours ever again? You're shaking your head no.
I haven't heard any discussion on it, and I do not expect for the LPC board to.
Because LMFT still can, correct? Well, you don't know that. We know that. So, okay. And I gotta say, this is kind of neat that there aren't this many questions. I think you guys are doing a fabulous job of getting the information out, and people are signing up for emails, and the way you're getting those PDF rules out there. Yeah, it's great. And I think the hot links, I'm a fan of the hot links when you click on the PDF and it takes you right where it needs to go. And Shannon, yes, this is all LPC updates because we've got representatives from the LPC board here. Yep.
I'm going to share screen. I think someone asked how to sign up for email updates.
Oh, yeah.
So on the main BHEC web page, we have these links here on the right-hand side. You're going to go to email updates and you just sign up. Very, very, very easy. And when there's anything going on with the board, you will get an automatic email message sent to you with that information. So email updates.
I know there was a proposed rule about being able to change your degree status, and y'all would update that. So there's a question, what's the status of that rule?
Sure. So again, on the BHEC webpage, I'm just going to show you another link. This is a newer one that we have here. So it's under proposed rule changes and the rulemaking process. This is a good one for you all to keep close by and know where it's at. So proposed rule changes and rulemaking process. This talks about the process itself, going to the Texas Register. And then this last section here is about the public comment process. So for the next BHEC meeting, right now, the only one that's, out there is this BHEC rule related to the PhD. So when you open this, it, gives you this really awesome information, and you can actually click specifically on the rule that you're looking for. So I'm going to go to update on degree on a license. And so this here, the 882.28, this is telling you what the rule changes were, and you can go and click and submit public comment, all that fun stuff. This rule will be voted on at the February 24th BHEC Council meeting for final adoption. If it does get adopted at the BHEC meeting, it'll then go to Texas Register, where it has to sit for 20 days and then become effective. That process, it did require the rule change to where there's a new application process and all that fun stuff. So it is something that hopefully we will have ready by the time the effective date is. We're thinking mid-March to have that up and running through the online application process. It is it's going to be $54 to get a new license with that on there. The one thing I want to make sure and stress to everyone, you will get a new license with that PhD if it is in counseling, okay? But if you go to the license verification page on our website, it is not going to show that PhD. It will only show it on the new license that you're going to get.
So one of the other new rules was defining where counseling happens, and I'm just going up to Boise Bristow's comment. So I know this doesn't, we've kind of, I know we've gone over this before, Texas protects Texans. And so, but this, I think, relates to that. Is that one of the rules, defining where counseling happens? Because I think that was one of the proposed rules.
Yes, let me see. Okay, yes, so this is, let me share screen again. So I am back under, let me go back to the top. So I went back to that same section under the rules, and it's under 882.23, license required to practice. Okay, so it's to clarify that when an individual is conducting a professional service in Texas, which is when the professional services are being delivered and the recipient of service is physically located in Texas. So basically, if the client is not in Texas, they're in another jurisdiction, that LPC, if they're coming from another state, does not need to get licensed in Texas if they're physically here. Wherever the client is where you need to be licensed. If it's in another jurisdiction other than Texas, you would need to call that other jurisdiction to see what their requirements are. So we go by where the client is physically located, not by residence, not by temporary residence, by where they are physically located.
Do you mind taking us to sharing your screen again and showing us the upgrade calendar where you are as far as new applications, new upgrades? The question is actually where you are as far as supervision upgrades, but I don't think you show that as on the website, right?
I don't think we do, but
I think
I'm
it is on there,
pretty
isn't it?
let me see. Timelines. Let's see. Oh, we do. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so for LPCs, looks like across the board, we're running on January 4th.
You guys are good.
And you can find that again on the council webpage under applying for a license and timelines. And these are the timelines that we're on. And just remember that if there's a deficiency for your upgrade or your new license or your supervisor status, if you haven't sent us something and we've sent you a deficiency notice and you applied before this date, that means you're missing something. We're waiting on you to send us something back.
Okay. We've got a question. Crystal, when a report is submitted to the board, is the reporter's name held anonymous? I'm guessing you mean complaint, Crystal.
I
Complaints
don't
can
think
be anonymous, but they you know, it's a lot of times if you're complaining on a colleague, it's going to be difficult for it to stay anonymous because questions are, you know, the investigation is going to lead to, you know, the questions we ask will make it pretty obvious who's submitting a complaint. So, but as far as what information is publicly available from complaints, it's all confidential.
We've got the change of supervision. Some have just used the online portal, but some have sent in the form. The form is required, correct? At this point, Tim, I know you said that you were trying to get that updated so we could do it all online, but right now it has to be.
Well, the form is only required for the completion of the supervision. So if you're just adding somebody, or if you're terminating somebody, you can do that via the web page. But to provide us with the official hours that that person earned, you would have to submit the form.
And the associate would submit that form when they're doing their online upgrade application. That's where they would attach their supervised experience documentation form. But
So the add and delete one is not necessary?
you should be able to do that online.
Yeah, you can. I just
Okay.
thought we had to do
You
the
can do it
form
either way.
also.
Yeah, you
You
have
can
an
do it
option
either-
of either way. Now, if you do it
Okay.
online, it's automatic compared to if
Right.
you're emailing it in, it could take a couple of days.
Okay, so you don't require a signature then, the form's just extra.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Good to know.
To get back to the location of the client talk, because I know there was a couple other questions on that. What this change is supposed to do is to help people, is to make sure that people can still get care if their provider comes here to Texas on vacation or whatever. It doesn't do anything more than that. So we get a lot of questions on the through our email and whatnot. Is like, so and so is down here for college, is down in Texas for college, and I'm up here in Minnesota. Can we do telehealth visits between me and him? Only if you have a license in Texas, because the client is in Texas. Now, if that Minnesota therapist came down here on vacation in February to get away from the snow and wanted to see other people up in, wanted to do video therapy up in Minnesota, as the rules are currently written, they wouldn't be able to do that either without a Texas license, because they would be practicing counseling in Texas, because right now it's where the client or the provider is. But with this rule change, it will become only where the client is.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying, Tim.
All right, we are up against time, and I want to respect y'all's time, and I appreciate your time. Thank you both so much for the information. And to contact you guys, don't contact you because you're busy, you're doing stuff. But if folks do have questions, what do you recommend they do?
The best way to reach out to us is using that contact us form on our website, because when you submit that, it goes directly to the area that it needs to go to, or the person that it needs to go to. And just stay informed of everything going on with the board. And it sounds like you guys are in good hands. If you're with Dr. Walker, you're definitely in some good hands. So just keep doing what you're doing, and thank y'all for everything you do.
Thank you, guys. And we'll see you hopefully at a conference, Christina, maybe see you sitting at the table and come up and say hi.
I'll be there. Yeah, don't be scared of me, guys. Come and say hello.
Thank you all so much. This is Dr. Kate Walker Training. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see ya.
Bye.